Etsy took down my original listing for violating Netflix intellectual property, which made no sense at all. If you're new here, hi, I'm Miri, the artist behind my small business, Noristudio, where I design and illustrate cute products that might bring a little joy to your day. The listing they took down, it was my original enamel pin. Boo the guinea pig in a little Halloween wreath. It's not fan art, it's my own character, my own design, and it has nothing to do with Netflix. I shared the story on Instagram and so many of you mentioned you've had the same problem or other frustrations with Etsy. The good news is, Etsy eventually reactivated my listing. So, aside from spending a random day running my small business from home, I want to walk you through what really happened, how I handled it, and most importantly, my honest thoughts on Etsy after years of selling there as a small artist. So, what actually happened? A few people suggested it might have been a competitor reporting my listing to mess with my shop performance. And while I know that does happen sometime, that's not what happened in this case. Based on Etsy's response, I can confirm it was a mistake made by their bot. My guess is that some big corporations have their IP info stored somewhere in Etsy's backend, and Etsy uses bots to scan listings and automatically take down anything that might be infringing. The problem is, these bots are dumb, like really dumb. They are underdeveloped, they make a ton of mistakes, and my listing just happened to get caught by one of them. This is what happens when big corporations try to squeeze out record profits by replacing real people with AI, even though the AI is not smart enough to do the job yet. Since my listings are already reactivated, I'll show you a quick tutorial on how to get yours reinstated if this happens to you. Just to be clear, this isn't a typical DMCA takedown. It's Etsy's IP bot removing a listing by mistake. When it happens, you'll get an email like this, but it won't include any contact info for the IP holder. So here's what you do. Go to your Etsy Seller Center, click Help, contact us, selling on Etsy, managing my shop and listing. Etsy removed my listing. Then click I still need help. In your message, write something like, my original product was mistakenly deactivated for copyright infringement. And you tell them which listing got removed, when you created the design, and maybe show them some proof you're the original creator. And then you ask for a manual review. If there's no other issue, Etsy usually reactivates your listing in a couple days. I've had my Etsy shop since 2014, so I've seen most of Etsy's big changes over the years. When I first started, I was selling 100% handmade needle felted figurines. I literally built Noristudio on Etsy. If you are curious about how I started as a fully handmade shop and how I slowly grew Noristudio into what it is today, I'm planning to make a video about that soon, so don't forget to subscribe if that sounds interesting to you. But for now, let's talk about the pros and cons of selling on Etsy, starting with the cons. Just to be clear, everything I'm sharing is based on my personal experience as a seller. I'm not a professional researcher or marketplace critic. These are simply my own observations, along with a few insights from conversations with other sellers. First of all, like many of you, I've been disappointed with the direction Etsy has been heading. Etsy was originally founded as a marketplace for handmade and vintage items, but the platform doesn't really prioritize handmade or vintage anymore. Instead, it's filled with resellers, stolen art, and now tons of AI-generated content. Meanwhile, their bots keep flagging original work like mine for supposed copyright violations, while mass-produced products and AI listings stay up. It feels like Etsy isn't actually enforcing its own rules. The second thing I've noticed is Etsy's habits of rolling out tools that sound promising at first, but then either abandoning them or letting them slowly fade away. One example is Etsy Wholesale. It launched in 2014 to help connect Etsy sellers with retail buyers for wholesale orders. I had some early success with it, and I really believed it had potential. But in 2018, Etsy shut it down, citing limited growth and a shift in focus back to their core marketplace. Looking back right now, I think that was such a short-sighted decision, especially considering how successful Fair, a wholesale alternative, has become. Another example is Etsy Pattern, their paid tool for creating a standalone website linked to your Etsy shop. In theory, it could have been so useful, syncing inventory, boosting SEO, and making management so much easier. As someone who also runs a Shopify store, I seriously thought about switching to Pattern just for the convenience, But after testing it, it felt way too underdeveloped, more like a starter toy compared to Shopify's professional setup. Honestly, Etsy's leadership seems focused on short term profits over a long term vision, and with the platform shifting away from its original mission, it's hard to feel hopeful about where it's headed. I also want to share one of the toughest realizations I've had after 10 years of running my business and observing how people shop. Real handmade work just isn't profitable, at least not without long term vision, serious investment, and a bit of luck. Why does a handmade marketplace allow art theft, reseller, and cheap factory made products often using stolen designs? The simple answer is those things sell. There are just far more people buying cheap mass produced goods than people willing to pay fair prices for quality handmade work. And if you are someone who does choose to support small independent artists like me, I just want to say thank you so much. Shopping small is a conscious choice. It supports better communities, a healthier environment, and fairer wages. That's honestly a rebellious act in a system that prioritizes speed, mass production, and cheap labor over mindful choices. The hard truth is, it's not just Etsy that's abandoning handmade. It's the majority of consumer. Etsy is just going along with it and making short-term decisions to drive profit, throwing away its long-term goal and even its founder. Once you realize that, the best mindset is to treat Etsy just like any other tool, a place to list and sell your products without getting emotionally attached. After all, it's just a free tool anyone can use. Now let's talk about the pros. First up, Etsy has a pretty beginner-friendly setup. Compared to many other marketplaces I've tried, Etsy's user interface is intuitive and easy to navigate. So, even if you don't watch any tutorials, you can probably figure out how to set up your shop, list products, and fulfill orders without much trouble. Another thing I actually like about Etsy is that, like any online marketplace, it gives you some free exposure through its existing customer base. If you have a marketable product and use good SEO, you can make consistent sales without relying on social media. Some people say you should focus on driving out traffic to your own website, but for me, that's been really tough. My Shopify store gets very little traffic from social media, while Etsy brings in a pretty decent number of consistent views and orders to search. So I treat Etsy as an exposure tool and use it alongside my own website. Another perk of selling on Etsy is that if you have a strong product with good photos, there's a chance it could get featured in Etsy's editor's picks. My shop has had a few items selected before, and each time I saw a noticeable boost in sales. It's not guaranteed, but if it happens, it's like icing on a cake. It can bring in a big wave of traffic and orders. On top of that, some customers just feel more comfortable shopping on marketplaces they already know. I've had repeat customers who only buy from my Etsy shop, even though I also have a standalone website. Also, some people receive Etsy gift cards and want to use them. So by keeping my shop on Etsy, I make sure they have the option to support my work using those cards. Etsy also makes life easier by handling tricky things like sales tax, VAT, and import duties. If you are just starting out and want to avoid all that paperwork, Etsy could be a good starting point. Yes, there's no denying it. Etsy has its share of art theft, reseller, and AI generated art. It's not perfect, but honestly, I've seen way worse. I'm talking about Amazon. If you want, I can share my horror story with Amazon in a separate video. Despite its flaws, Etsy is still a relatively decent selling environment. I actually recommend keeping an Etsy shop alongside your own standalone website. That said, whatever you do, don't open an Amazon shop for your branded original items. Etsy may have its issues and some strange competitor behavior, but it's nothing compared to the chaos I experienced on Amazon. So, here's my takeaway for anyone thinking about selling arts online. Etsy can still be a helpful starting point, but use it wisely. Don't rely on it as your only source of income or visibility. Build your own standalone website. Connect directly with your audience and treat Etsy as just one piece of a bigger picture. I know it's cliche, but it's so true. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. If there is something you're curious about, let me know what you'd like me to cover in future studio vlogs. Thank you so much for spending time with me, and I'll see you in the next one.